Hello, YouTube. Just give me 1 second here and we will start the Twitch stream and then we'll be in business. So just give me one moment here. Hi everybody, welcome to the Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and crazy, frantic, nutty kind of day with duct tape and reciprocating saw blades like that one. I got wire ties. There's not a level, flat surface anywhere in the entire desk here. We've had the studio since 2014, and it is now time to kind of get things kind of squared away for the first of the interview shows with our friend John Voight over there. I still have not managed to confirm a time yet because I haven't spoken to him. I had to go through and make notes for Midnight Cowboy, which I'd seen once quite a very, very long time ago. And I just went through the whole movie. I mean, that's why we're a little late getting started here and why I have so little time tonight because I have so much left to do today. But I just sat and watched it, and movie's a little over 2.5 hours. And I think I spent the last 5 or 6 hours on it. It's really not anything I've ever done before. To really sit down. Well, thank you very much for that, Taps. Hi, Bill. Really appreciate you and everything you do. That means the world to me. Thank you very much. But I've never done this with a movie before. I just sat down and thank you, and watched it and made notes as I went. And I did probably 4,000 words worth of notes. I think probably 4 or 5 pages. We did so many notes on Midnight Cowboy. I was a little concerned that we would. I don't want to take all of John's time, and I've decided to keep the conversation with John down to 2. I'd like to do. I'd like to start with the Champ, and then I'd like to do Midnight Cowboy. The thing that. I don't know if it's an archetype, a trope, or whatever. And the more I think about it, the less I want to be confined by these things. But we'll get to that eventually. But the one thing that those two movies have in common, for me, aside from the fact that my friend John Voight is in them, is this concept I'm calling the heart of gold. Both Joe Buck and Billy in The Champ are guys who are doing unpleasant things and have unpleasant backgrounds, but on the other hand, they have the heart of gold, and that's why people like them. That's why those movies are iconic, and John has a really unique ability to take a guy who is really tough, and he's just so physically imposing, and just big tough guy. He lets you in, and you get to see this heart of gold thing, and I just find that really, really interesting. So hello, everybody, for the kind words, and welcome to all of you for the stream for the first time live. My good, close, personal friend, John Voight, who I've often been personally friendly with on a close basis. I had forgotten how much that radio is in there. And he hawks the radio in Midnight Cowboy, which I'd forgotten about. So we bought it back for him. Dave Big Boutte says Han Solo's archetype was the pirate with the heart of gold. Yeah, that'll work. He's the rogue, which is different than the villain or the bad guy. You know, the rogue is a charming kind of a character. And I did not know this, but Speaking of Harrison Ford, just wrapping up the research on Midnight Cowboy, Harrison Ford auditioned for Midnight Cowboy, which seems really crazy. And I think the role was originally supposed to go to Michael Sarrazin. I don't know if you remember that guy. That would have been a much different and much worse movie, I think. So, aside from watching the movie, I just wrapped up a couple little basic fundamental data points about that. It's the only X-rated movie ever to win Best Picture. If you were to release that movie today, it might be an R, maybe an R, probably get away with a PG-13. There's not a single F-bomb in it. I don't think there's a single S-word in it. There's flashes of nudity. The main reason it was given an X rating is because there's a fair amount of kind of homosexual themes involved with this underside of New York. And I think that's what actually gave it that rating, but it won Best Picture. Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman both nominated for Best Actor. Neither one of them won that year. Jon Voight would win Best Actor in 1979 for Coming Home. Dustin Hoffman would win the following year for Kramer versus Kramer, and then in 1989, almost another 10 years later, he'd win again for Tootsie. For Rain Man. The film is exceedingly mild, and that there's something actually there, in terms of what society considered to be just untouchable situations then versus now. But honestly, I wouldn't call it a family film, but it's certainly not. It's not a shocking film. It was shocking at the time, but it's not a shocking film. And so I basically went through the whole thing and just started looking at John's character. And one of the things that really struck me is the thing opens essentially with a montage of Joe Buck in Texas getting ready to get on the bus for New York, and by the time you're 4 minutes into this movie, it's kind of unusual to open with a montage. By the time you get into this movie, 4 or 5 minutes, you know so much about this character. You know an awful lot about Joe Buck before he gets off the bus in New York. And he gets off the bus in New York probably 6 or 7 minutes in. It's astonishing how much subtle stuff they put in there. And that was one of the things that it's one of the things that I really want to talk about, is how stories are created, and how writers will do things, and just when you've got a really good script and you've got a good director and a great cast. I don't know who did what. I'm somewhat interested in knowing that, not crazy interested. But when you have all those things together, there are just so many things in there that I almost call them Easter eggs, but they're much more important than that. There's just so much in there that's, for example, one of the important rules of at least writing a good screenplay is pay off everything that you set up, and don't set up anything that you're not going to pay off. So that just means if you leave a situation hanging in the air or add something in there, it needs to be there for a reason. And without giving any of the interview away, one of the little examples of this is very early in the movie, that opening montage. You see young Joe Buck at age about, 5 or 6. His kind of tramp mother is taking him over to his grandmother's to raise him. And little Joe Buck is wearing an army uniform, wearing a khaki army uniform, khaki shirt, khaki pants. And then almost at the end of the movie, you find out that Joe Buck's grandmother died without her telling him. And then you flash back to the house, and you see fully grown Joe Buck sitting there with this kind of shocked look on his face. and he's wearing the military uniform. He didn't know she died because he was in the military. And seeing this kid back on the same stairs in the same uniform, 22 years later, that's just good filmmaking. It's just really, really good filmmaking. And there's a bunch of those kind of things in there. And to me, without getting too deep into it, well, I mean, I certainly know what the meta of it is, and I'm not going to talk about that now. But basically, New York is Joe Buck's promised land. He goes there like he's going to a gold rush. Like, he just picked the gold nuggets off the floor. But New York is a form of the underworld, and I mean that in kind of the classical mythological sense. It's a form of hell. And these two characters go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into this hell. And both of them emerge from the hell, but only one of them gets to go to the promised land. And that became really clear to me, was that New York in this movie is a hell. It's almost a metaphysical place where everybody is faceless, everybody's running a hustle, everybody's a cynic, everybody's trying to game everybody else, and you've got 9 million people or whatever it is packed shoulder to shoulder, and they're the loneliest people in the world. And that's a really interesting idea. Joe Buck starts off as this hayseed country boy from small town in Texas. He goes to New York City, which is like a fire assay. It just melts him, burns off all the slag, and by the time he leaves and gets down to Florida, he's not the naive country boy he was when he got to New York, because of his time in relationship with Ratso Rizzo. And likewise, Ratso Rizzo isn't Ratso Rizzo anymore when he gets on the bus and leaves New York. So it's just a fascinating dynamic. And as I mentioned, obviously 100 times, the show's not about politics, but I did mention it to John because that struck me as interesting, that in a time when there's so much division in the country between red and blue states, and that usually means, California, if you look at it in terms of area, is a pretty red state. It's just that the blue of San Francisco, Los Angeles, and to a somewhat lesser degree San Diego was just so heavily populated. But Midnight Cowboy struck me, and I pitched it to John as kind of a metaphor for how the two Americas kind of need each other. And watching the movie again, I just thought, yeah, the city dweller is practically a Morlock. He's tubercular, and he's crippled. He's tiny. He's sweaty. He's ugly, and the red state guy, the country boy, is just this golden giant of health and virility, but he's not very smart, and he's especially naive. It's not so much that Joe's not smart. Joe isn't smart. When I asked John about it, I mentioned I liked to do Midnight Cowboy, talk about Joe Buck, and first thing out of John's mouth was, well, he sure is stupid. And I thought, yeah, well, there's no question about that. But it's not so much that he gets cured of his stupidity. He gets cured of his naivete. He gets cured of his... he's a man-child. So I didn't have so Edward Smith says, so Bill had the interview, or the pre-interview at least, with John Voight. When is it going to be dropped? I didn't have a pre-interview with him so much as I sent him an email pitching the idea. He texted me back a couple days later, said, it sounds like fun, give me a call. We talked about it for about 10 or 15 minutes. He was somewhat reluctant to do it. And when I told him I wanted to talk about his craft, not even so much his technique, as just how does he get there from here, he said, well, I don't know if I'd have anything to say about that. And I said, I find that hard to believe, John. And he said, well, no one's ever asked me that question before. And I thought, well, this could be interesting. So this is obviously the opening episode of the new series. It's not scheduled yet. I had to get those notes done. I wanted to be 100% prepared before I did John Boyd. I had to have the cutout in place, had to get the special present, plus the plaque on the back, plus these notes in. I'm ready to go. So I'm calling him first thing in the morning tomorrow and getting a date, hopefully, for this week. But I want to look at this and just kind of walk through the movie. And I will be playing the writer in this. Cody Pett says, I hope you get the questions tonight. Mine was semi-time sensitive and linked to an email, but if you don't have the time, you don't have it. I will be doing the questions in just a moment, Cody. Thanks for the super chat and for all the previous ones as well. So I've been working with the Sawzall on this giant wooden thing back here. That thing. It's a floor platform that they built back in 2014 when we put the office in, and mostly it's just I thought I needed it for the other desk over there, but it turns out I didn't, and it weighs. I'm going to say, just based on the effort it takes me to slide it, because I can't lift it. I can't lift a corner of it. I think it weighs at least 500-600 pounds. I would say at least that. It's just built like a tank, and it's long. So I've been cutting this thing up in little pieces, and I'm going to use those and keep them as steps for motion capture downstream. But I want that thing out of the way. I'm going to rearrange and light. Come on. This stuff back here. I'm going to put the air conditioners back in and close that door. Throw some lights on this guy. Going to get the ceiling track lights on these various cardboard cutouts, and then we're going to go. So I got a lot to do. Yeah, Eric Blake in the Twitch stream is just humming. Everybody's talking at me. It's not everybody talking about me. It's everybody's talking at me. And the movie starts off with that song. It's really catchy. I've heard it 9 times now in the last hour, I guess, or a couple hours. And it's an extremely optimistic song when you think about it. I'm going where the sun is shining through the pouring rain. I'm going where the weather fits my clothes. Grabbing hold of the northeast wind, sailing on a summer breeze, skipping over the ocean like a stone. It's so cash. And that's Joe Buck at the beginning of the movie. And then you just start peeling off these layers and you realize, this guy's got some real problems, and the foreshadowing of those problems are in the first, by 2-3 minutes into the movie. You know that this guy's messed up, and you know why. But he unmesses himself, and I like that, so that's good. Okay, so we are going to. I'm going to confine our conversation to those two. I hope we can get to both of them. I've got a lot less on the Champ than I do on Midnight Cowboy. I think Midnight Cowboy will be just an interesting kind of a test bed for taking apart a movie from a perspective of a writer and an actor in real time. Obviously, I didn't write Midnight Cowboy. It's a superb script, and I'm not claiming to be that good a writer, but I know enough about this process to be able to. My hope is that we can talk about this in real time and say, okay, so then this is in the script, John. This one thing's in the script here, and this one little thing says a lot, and basically see if I can find out where he basically assembled that character out of that. For example, when you see him in the opening. On his way to New York, he's literally skipping. He's like kicking cans and almost practically jumping up and clicking his heels in the air. He's so excited to go to New York and make an easy living, seducing all these women, because that's all he knows how to do. And he's got 2 items in his possession. He's got a cowhide suitcase. He's dressed like a cowboy. He's got a cowhide suitcase, and he's got a transistor radio. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Yet the one thing that's like really old and kind of a flashback to the character that he is in Texas. He's been playing cowboys and Indians ever since he was born. So he's a man-child who's never grown up. He thinks he's a cowboy, he acts like a cowboy. His whole hustle is that he's a cowboy. So he's got the cowboy suitcase, but at the same time, he's got this transistor radio, which I think is kind of his vision of the future. This is what people in New York do. They listen to transistor radios. And one in one hand and one in the other. And the radio makes a much, 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 much larger appearance than I ever remembered. So that'll be happy news. But lots and lots and lots of little things in there, and I'm curious to know what his take will be when I kind of toss these things up in terms of, okay, so now the script is telling you this, and what's going on through his mind here, and how do you pull together what's going through Joe's mind here, and talked about this kind of thing before. I'm hoping to have it by the time we have the next Stratosphere studio a week from tonight. I hope to have the interview in the can by then. That'll depend on his schedule pretty much exclusively. And also, I will have a highlight reel, I'm thinking within 24 hours of the shoot. So it's very exciting, and we'll see what we can do with that. All right, let's get to the questions, because I've got some things I have to cut up, and I just have to post a right angle for today and all the rest for tomorrow and all the rest of that stuff. So let's just jump right in it, shall we? I'm very excited about this. This little headline on Firefox, and Deion Sanders is turning Colorado into something, isn't he? How about that? Okay. Excuse me. So we got 11 posts, and that's quite a lot of posts. Let's see if we can get through these all. All right, here we go. From Ian Noland. Bill, maybe this is culture, maybe it's politics these days, who can tell? Good point, and that's kind of one of the sort of themes about this thing, is there's a pretty thin line dividing all of this stuff. Anyhow, this is for the audience as much as it is for you. I, like you, am deeply embedded in Deep Blue, but maybe that means we're guerrilla fighters behind enemy lines who have to sabotage. What's the best way to poison the culture against masking up again? The best I've thought of is to smile to smile to maskers and thank them for protecting us. Any other suggestions? I personally, Ian, I don't want to give those people a particle of positive feedback for their neuroses. I'll just tell you the first thing that comes to mind in terms of masking up again. There's no way that this country is going to mask up again unless there is, and I even with this caveat, there better be a pretty significant body count behind this, because that's how they got away with it last time. I get the feeling that COVID is going to end up being like The Simpsons, just really, really useful and just quality product for 3 or 4 years. In the case of COVID, a year, 18 months, and then rapidly running out its welcome to the point where The Simpsons now is just a walking corpse and has been for almost 20 years. I suspect they're going to keep trotting COVID out, or the reaction to COVID, as frequently as they possibly can. But I don't see a remasking. I mean, I just don't see it. I'm not saying that they don't want to do it, and I'm certainly not saying that there's not a large number of people, most of whom live in California, who'd be thrilled with the idea. I find these people to be, like I said, nowadays for me, anybody who's wearing a COVID mask, it's like an ATV's, the giant, warning flag that sticks up on the flexible pole in the back, little orange pennant to tell you that there's danger on the other side of this dune. That's what anytime I see a person wearing a mask now, I go, this is a neurotic at the very best case. And you just want to stay as far away from these people as possible. But they want it, no doubt, and all the rest of these neurotic cowards want it. But I think most people were very happy to see them go, and I think they were able to scare us into it the first time because nobody knew anything about it. But now, I'm not putting anything past California, don't get me wrong, but I cannot imagine anything related to COVID causing places like Florida or Texas to mask up, and I don't think any other states either. They got away with what they got away with because of the level of fear, but not even fear. It was just uncertainty. Nobody knew, and if you don't know the answer, it's smart to take the safe course. That's prudent. But that's over and done with. So I don't know. I think I've heard a number of people say, "Oh, they're mumbling about COVID again," and to me, it's kind of like mumble away. Go ahead. While you're mumbling about having to remask everybody, why don't you indict Donald Trump another 2-3 times while you're at it? Because every single time you do this, you lower your effectiveness. Every single time you use this weapon, the weapon gets duller, and you don't. I'm just saying, go ahead. Just start grinding it down against the wall if you want to. Trump's position in 2024 is starting to look very solid. But, we have the lesson of 2022 and the lesson of 2020 and all the rest of it, but that's really more of a political issue. In any event, I wouldn't thank them for keeping us safe. I understand your theory behind it. Don't get me wrong, Ian. I completely get it. But to be honest with you, I just think that would encourage people in their neuroses and make them even more of a Karen. So Eric says, the thing is, Bill, even in Central Florida where I live, there are quite a few people who insist on masking up when shopping at Walmart. Well, then they can mask up for the rest of their lives. And that's their business. I kind of want to see what my good old alma mater's campus looks like today, University of Florida. But I haven't been back to UF in, I don't think I've been back since I left in 97 or 98, so it's a long time. And I don't, I get the feeling I'd be very, very, very heartbroken about it, so we'll see. I'm personally not worried about it for what it's worth, Ian. I really don't see that as something that they're going to get, to pull off. But I was wrong about that before. But I don't think I'm wrong about it this time. We'll see. But I'm not making any plans. Moving on, Chris Taylor, who's posted a photo of a guy who's sitting in what looks like a homemade, what do you want to call those things? What the drones, hexacopter or whatever. Anyway, let's see what he says. I have someone I'd like to nominate for an attaboy from the Horizon crew, and as an example of the youth of today that our national leadership is failing, and that's Ethan Zentner, a teenager from Glendale, Wisconsin. In 2021, Ethan won the $5,000 first prize in the Material Science Division of the International Science and Engineering Fair with his project, The Effects of Lattice Structure on SLA 3D Printed Piezoelectric PVDF. Good for you, kid. I consider myself to be an educated person in science as well, and I understand 2 out of 3 of those words, so that's a good sign. Ethan, 22, Ethan then did what any red-blooded American teenager would do with a few $1,000s burning a hole in his pocket. He decided to build himself a hot rod. Being an aspiring engineer, though, Ethan set his sights on a flying hot rod, and he's got a quadcopter, a hexacopter there. It conspicuously lacks any provision for a girlfriend. Let me just interrupt here and say, if you manage to get this thing off the ground, it looks like you are more than capable of it, Ethan. You don't actually have to take a girl for a ride on that. All you have to do is fly it over the school. I think you'll be fine after that. And he really needs some guards on those blades in case one decides to fly apart. Perhaps he can remedy those problems with the new $5,000 he just won for first place in the Engineering, Technology, Statistics, and Dynamics category of the 2023 International Science and Engineering Fair with his project Design, Construction, and Testing of a Passenger-Capable eVTOL Hexacopter. I got hexacopter right. I just guessed it. Hadn't read that. I have no affiliation with young Mr. Zentner. I just saw a write-up on his project and thought I'd pass it along. I'm glad you did. I'd like to talk to him. Here's the Navy press release on his related scholarship from the Office of Naval Research, where Doug or Jeff might stumble across it. Okay, meaning those members of the Moon Group. And here is the Local Boy Done Good newspaper article the above photo came from, and a link for that too. Well, thanks for sending that. First of all, Ian, it fills me with, Chris, it fills me with great happiness to see, number one. Excuse me. Never do that on stage, by the way. If you start yawning on stage, everybody will yawn on stage. Okay, so what I find interesting about this is not that we still have, kids with good brains, but I mean, it's well recorded that China probably graduates more engineers in a year than we graduate students of any kind. And so you're tempted to think, wow, they must be really, just banging on ahead of us. But see, this kind of thing, this kind of progress, this kind of Project Horizon progress especially, is not just a function of education or intelligence. You've got to have two additional qualities, at least two. You've got to have ambition, which I find to be essentially non-existent in Chinese culture, individual ambition, and you have to have guts. And I'd probably go even further and say you kind of have to have private capital. So that'd be the three things that they don't have and don't appear to be in any danger of getting. This kind of thing is what I like to think Americans are good at. And the fact that this young man is ready to put his butt on the seat of this thing and take it up and go around is awesome. And the fact that he didn't wait, that's really what I really admire about this guy, is that he didn't wait, because clearly he could have gotten an engineering job, and I'm sure he could have gotten an engineering job at a company that was making one of these things. But then he's going to have to work his way through the ranks, and if he wants to fly one, he's going to have to buy one, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, just go build it. Why not? He fortunately looks like most other kids who are, well, he's a teenager. He looks, he's probably about 15, I would say, which is a good time to go fly in a hexacopter, because he looks like he weighs about 100 pounds, soaking wet. But nevertheless, I've seen much worse looking vehicles. By the way, as a somewhat related, completely different note, I was looking at the previews for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, which is coming out in 2024, and among the many vehicles that they have modeled is the Jetson. You can fly the Jetson over photorealistic terrain that is taken of the Earth, and I just think that will just probably have to get it just for that. That just sounds like so much fun. So congratulations to you, Ethan, and thanks for the note, Chris. It really really cheered me up. It's good to hear those kind of things. Moving on, it's Mr. Eric Blake. Oh, in italics, so we must have some kind of dark and stormy nights sort of thing here. The night is cold as the ninth circle of hell. It's raining over the nation tonight. A rain that could be hard enough to wash the slime off the streets of the city by the bay, but don't count on it. In a tower overseeing the national rain is the office of the man with the hat, the not-so-private dick that sees the truths you need and deserve, but often not the ones you want. The frosted glass door says, Eric M. Blake, investigator, come in if you want to live. Awesome. I hope we got that down because I'm never reading that again. It's actually extremely entertaining. So now we're off the italics now. So now we're getting serious. So I've been going over some old files, Bill, and I looked at one of yours, Walking into Mordor. Remember that? I remember the title. I don't remember what it was about. Good analogy for the culture war, but obviously in need of some updating for who's the army keeping the forces of Mordor occupied and who's going deep into the belly of the beast to cast the ring into fire. I think I remember what this was about. It was essentially about the idea of conservatives having guys like, at the time, people like me and Andrew Breitbart and a number of other people who got the pop culture message. And then you'd have guys like, Ben Shapiro and that crowd holding the line. That'd be the regular army forces just on the political front holding the line. Charlie Kirk, that kind of guy. And then, so that would be the army at Mordor that's, distracting the eye of Sauron while the special forces guys sneak in the back and start blowing things up. Clearly, MAGA has a claim to be the former, but who would you say is the latter nowadays? The army keeping the forces of Mordor occupied. Since Daily Wire's entertainment, unless I'm missing something, is only visible to the pay inquirer, I somehow doubt that really qualifies. Must investigate further. Yeah. So I'm just thinking about the payroll, the paywall thing. On some level, it seems so counterproductive to me, because if your purpose as Daily Wire or any of these other services for that matter is to change minds and help recover America, and you want your stuff seen by as many people as possible, and that means the people who are behind your paywall are the people who already got the message. That's why they're paying you. So that's a point. But on the other hand, I look around here and we're just hanging on by our fingernails until I can get this Frank Luke script finished. I mean, by our fingernails. And I realize, well, business is business. I've been doing the videos stuff since 2008. So 15 years approximately. And we've had the same problem from the beginning. This is the problem that PJTV had. It's a problem that the Blaze had. It's a problem that everybody has. Although, I have to say, 15 years is a long time, and we are kind of generationally moving our way away from this. But the problem with the internet and videos and things of that nature and trying to change the culture through this, the problem is that prior to the YouTube being so dominant, the internet is free. Television is free, and so internet television should be free. That's what people who are my age or approximately my age are used to. Television is free. You don't pay for television, and you buy. Most people have an internet service that costs the same regardless of how much they use it. And so the idea of paying for stuff is just not something, especially paying for stuff that you can see for free. That takes a special kind of person, and those are the members we have here at BillWhittle.com who've repeatedly said we're paying for this to get the message out. But we are now at basically at our diamond core of people who think this way, and we just have to up the revenues, and that means we have to start running this like a business and putting things behind the paywall to get people who aren't that generous or visionary to kick in, And I am obviously through this and the Major Mace Mattingly thing, both of which I plan to lead to eventually to bigger things. But the reason I'm going down both of these paths more or less at the same time is because I want to do kind of what you're talking about here in that, or what I was talking about in that video. I want to go deep behind enemy lines and start blowing up things, and by the time they realize that this ammo dump is blown up and they start sending troops in that direction, we're out of there, and then a bridge on the other side of the map goes down, that kind of thing. So both of these things are designed to get our fundamental worldview out there, and at the same time do it in such a way that we not only get people who would never watch political commentary, especially conservative political commentary, and also, and probably even more importantly, a way that gets us around the YouTube algorithm, because the algorithm is the enemy. They just couldn't leave it alone, you know. There was a time, there was a kind of a golden age there between 2009 and let's say maybe 2000. It was certainly over by the time we got to 2016, so maybe around 2011, 12, 13, somewhere in there, when these big players on the internet did what they actually said they were going to do, and that's all. During those early days, YouTube played videos, and YouTube didn't make any selection for or against a video. It did keep things like explicit sexual content off, and that's reasonable and necessary. They didn't make any editorial decisions, and the algorithm, such as it was, responded to video's popularity, and a video that was doing well would start doing better, which is why a lot of those firewalls were in the 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 range, and several of them were million plus. Facebook, before it started filtering news, was just a way for you to connect to everybody. You posted something on Facebook, it went to all of your friends on Facebook. You posted something on YouTube, it went to all of the people that subscribed, and Google, if you can believe it, actually provided search results in order of relevancy rather than in order of political outcome. So that was a happy time, but that time is gone, and it's not coming back unless politicians get in there and break these things up. I'm not a fan of the government interfering with business, but this isn't business. This is a monopoly in the same way that the electric company is a monopoly. I don't have a choice of going to another YouTube, not when they have this kind of reach. And I would have no ethical justification for wanting to break up YouTube, nor would I have any desire to want to break up YouTube, as an example, if YouTube did what they said they were, which was be a carrier. We're not responsible for the content that goes up there. We just simply put a place where people can put up their videos. If there's a video up there that's got a problem with Disney copyright, that's this guy, it's not us. If they'd stuck with that model, I'd be fine with them. But once they start editorializing, then they're no longer a carrier, and since they're no longer a carrier, they're a monopoly publisher, and those things need to be broken up. So I'm fine with that. Rumble's a great example. You know, we post all of our BillWhittle.com videos, which I will be doing as soon as I get through these questions. I have to upload it to Rumble. And then SoundCloud, we do the audio-only version, and then we do another upload to YouTube, and then we do a fourth upload to Facebook. So that's 4 times I have to upload it. Our website links to the Rumble video, which is another posting series of 15 or 20 mouse clicks that has to get done to just post it on BillWhittle.com. And then the MailChimp email software that we have is probably another 10 or 12 mouse clicks to get the link to the website where you can see the video, make comments on the video, and that embedded video there's from Rumble, but it's also on YouTube because that's where most of the eyeballs are. We put it on Rumble because we just didn't want to we got tired of having strikes against us or having things taken down, all the rest of it. So just using Rumble as an example, Rumble is better. It's more watched than it used to be, but it's not. It's orders and orders of magnitude below YouTube. And if the entire purpose of this is to change people's minds, you have to go where the eyeballs are. So that means for the foreseeable future, it means YouTube. And I can't do anything about their algorithm that's looking for political content, but I think I can make entertainment that has no overt political message, but nevertheless deals with things that make for better people, better citizens, and a better republic. And that's the theory. We're going to find out. But that's basically, what we're doing. So I like to think of, I don't think of Daily Wire as a special forces team. I think Daily Wire is the strongest of the several kind of conservative frontline, let's fight the culture war out where the culture war is. It's Lord Bios. So good to see you again. You're so generous with your time and your expertise during the coronavirus thing, Lord Bios. I can't tell you how much that meant to me. But Daily Wire is there, and all these other people are there, and they're all doing openly political content, and I'll continue to do some of that. But really, I am trying to. I want to be a sticky bomb on the side of their wheels. That's what I want to be. I just want to be like a sticky bomb on the wheels on the side of their tank that I can detonate by remote control once it gets close to some of the other tanks out there. So we're not dealing with their frontal armor, and we're not dealing with their gun. We're coming in under the guns, and we're staying so close to them that they can't hit us. It's like clinch fighting. So that's the hope and the plan anyway. All right, here we go. Eduardo Enrique. Greetings, Bill. Wizard 13 here. Hello, Enrique. How are you? Long time no post. True. Been happy to see you back. But even with the time zone not allowing me to see live, I always catch it the next day. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Today, a game called Lies of P launched. From a Korean developer, it's an incredible adaptation of Pinocchio in a horror steampunk setting with an incredible story, gameplay, music, and zero wokeness, approaching themes like family, truth and lies, and the nature of being human while kicking ass. Liking it so far. Not asking you to play it or review it, I just want your 2 cents on the fact that the best adaptation of a Western story such as Pinocchio of the last decade was made by Koreans. At which point are we that the East tells our stories better than ourselves? And here's a picture of the game trailer. Just have a quick peek here. Well, it's certainly striking visually here. Hang on a second. Come on. Go, 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 baby. Go, baby, go. Yeah, it has kind of a Mortal Kombat kind of a vibe to it. Unless I'm looking at an ad. I'm sorry, I was looking at an ad. Beg your pardon. Yeah, it looks fantastic. So, to answer your actual question, first of all, I think we should, I think we take help wherever we can find it. I'd much prefer, if I'm out in the middle of a hot zone, I'd prefer to be rescued by American, Blackhawks with F-22 air cover and and hundreds of Apaches flying escort. That's what I prefer. But if a Korean guy in a pickup truck offered me a ride out of there, I'd take it. So that's one way to look at it, and any contribution to this is great. And really on a larger, a much larger, more important point, to be honest with you, this is something I think that we should be concentrating on, and a card we should be playing much, much more often. And I think Donald Trump would be wise to play this card too. And that is that this is not an American problem, or it's not a uniquely American problem. this battle for Western civilization is taking place all across Western civilization, um, and uh, and it's not about Republicans versus Democrats, or liberals versus conservatives. It's about the elites versus the people of the world. And I think the broader we make that definition, the more people will get on our side. I think we exclude a lot of people because of labels. That this label's been, you know, tarred and so pretty much effectively demonized that there are people out there who would genuinely rather watch their cities burn down than vote Republican because they've been so convinced that, well, at least, I may be living in a world of violence and crime, but at least I'm not a racist, homophobic, transphobic idiot like those Republicans. But I really think that this is a worldwide phenomenon. I see it everywhere, and South Korea is on the side of freedom as a general rule, and so I'll take it. Things that it makes me happy to see video games that are coming out by North Korea. What I'm not seeing are video games coming out by China, but all that means is I'm not seeing video games coming out that have a Chinese development house on it. It's entirely not only possible but likely that, in fact, I'm sure it's certain, the Chinese money is backing some of these traditional large video game companies, and I'm just going to mention I'm just going to mention like EA, not because I have any evidence that I'm certainly not there to pick them out. It's just the first thing I thought of, and so that's something to be worried about. I just said North Korea. Well, it got me halfway to Kamala Harris, but I didn't say that North Korea is a valuable ally of ours, and we have a deep and enduring relationship with North Korea. So South Korea is our friend, and anything they can do that helps us win this broader war is good with me. I don't, like I said, I'd rather be rescued by New Zealanders than go down waiting for the 8th Cavalry to arrive. So hopefully that'll take care of that. Here's one from Jacob Belchek. We have Chris Taylor, Jacob Belchek again. Then we have Cody Fett. That's the one we got to get to. Charles Tomes, Eric Blake, and that's all right. Let's see if we can chew through these things here. Jacob Belchek, hail Bill, hail Jacob. It seems to me that there are 4 pillars to storytelling: plot, character, world, and theme. Interesting. How would you order these in terms of importance during your own writing? How do you develop each pillar? Yes, I'm shamelessly picking your brain for creative insight. You probably come to the dollar store of creative insight, but in any event, I'll do what I can. No, I will not apologize. Hope your first interview goes great. Plot, character, world, and theme. Well, I can answer this. I can answer one of these very easily. The most important thing by far is the theme. When you recount a movie to somebody, you're not recounting the theme of the movie, you're recounting the plot. And the plot is there to elicit emotions. And the plot consists of a series of conversations, actions, car chases, helicopter shots, voiceovers, music, all of that. All of that stuff is constructed in a plot. The plot is the skeleton of the story, and it's the dehydrated story. But baked into that plot is the theme, because things happen for a certain reason. That's why you put them together in a plot. But the theme is by far the most important aspect of any of these storytelling things, and the theme reduces itself to, I mean, if I told you, if somebody said, tell me about the first Star Wars movie, which was called Star Wars. I'm not getting into that whole thing. But if I told you about Star Wars, I would say, it's a story about a guy who's he's a young, basically a farm kid, and he stumbles upon this message of rescue from this princess, and he's always kind of wanted to get off the planet. So his parents are killed, or his uncle and aunt are killed. So that kind of frees him up, and he meets a wise old friend of his named Obi-Wan Kenobi, and together they charter a ship that's owned by this rogue and his kind of weird alien co-pilot, and they go to this kind of prison where the princess is being held, and they go in there and they break out and they escape. And it looks like everything's great, but it turns out that this prison, this Death Star, is coming to destroy the rebellion, and so they have to go out again against overwhelming odds. And there's this big old fight. Then they blow up the Death Star, and there's this big explosion, and everybody wins. Everybody gets medals. That's the plot of Star Wars. But it's not the theme of Star Wars. The theme of Star Wars is that, well, there's a number of themes. One of them is that one person can make a difference. If this is why entertainment can never be collective. I'm not saying you can't make a collectivist movie. I'm just saying it's not going to be entertaining. Entertainment's always about individuals. It's always about individual action and agency. So one of the themes of Star Wars is that anyone can make a difference. Even the most modest of us can make a difference. You don't have to be Zap Brannigan to influence the course of history, which leads us to a second theme. Anybody can do it if they have the heart of gold. And Luke has the heart of gold. And he's always got the heart of gold. He's always had it, and he always keeps it. But the heart of gold is wrapped up in an awful lot of kudzu of adolescence and ego and arrogance and naivete and all of those things. So the theme of Star Wars, one of the themes of Star Wars is hardship burns away all of your artifice. Hardship and danger and risk to your life, mortal risk, burn off all of the crud that accumulates over everybody's person and soul. And Star Wars is the story about how one individual overcomes his own childishness and becomes, well, it's really a three-part. I mean, the Star Wars is Star Wars Empire and Return of the Jedi. That arc is the story of a boy becoming a man by accepting responsibility, and not only accepting responsibility, learning the discipline. Luke is undisciplined. He goes running off to save his friends in the second movie, and things just get worse at the end of the second movie. By the time you get to Luke in the third movie, he is a master of his emotions. And Luke's the Luke Skywalker story in those three movies, because that's what it is. Everything else is just making it worse or much worse. Those three movies culminate in a single action, and it is the action of the ultimate warrior poet, and that is swordlessness. Sun Tzu wrote about swordlessness, and he said the ultimate warrior can walk into the enemy camp and defeat them without a sword. He can go in without a sword. He can defeat them using their weapons. He can win without fighting. That's the ultimate victory, is to win without fighting. You don't take any losses. You don't destroy anything. And so the entire Star Wars story turns on the moment that Luke turns his lightsaber off and throws it aside. That's what everything prior to that is building up to. That's what makes Luke Luke. That's the test that his father Anakin failed. He didn't give in to his passions. He didn't give in to his desire for revenge or his desire for power or whatever else. No. He's a better man than that. He wasn't a better man when it started, but he became a better man than that. And I always found it really kind of interesting, and I would imagine certainly not accidental, that when he's at his most conflicted and primitive and unevolved in the first movie, he's wearing white all the time. In the second movie, he's wearing gray all the time. And in the third movie, he's wearing black all the time. Maybe he's a black belt in that. But that's why that's so important. And one, just as a quick aside, one of the many, 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 many reasons that J.J. Abrams is damned to storytelling hell for all eternity is because that is a perfect story that ends with the death of evil incarnate in the form, not of Darth Vader, because Darth Vader is redeemable, but in the form of the Emperor. When the Emperor is cast down into that bottomless pit, and then the Death Star explodes, that is it. That's evil. That is defeating the dragon. That's St. George slaying the dragon. And for J.J. Abrams to say, well, yes, he was cast down, 200 stories, and the 200 stories exploded in a fusion reaction that was, as bright as the sun and wiped out everything for, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles all around it. He managed to survive somehow because of the Force. And so by having Palpatine come back for the last of the movies, which is the last of the movies, they pretty much killed it. By having Palpatine come back, everything that happens in the first three movies is essentially irrelevant. You killed the Emperor, but you didn't really. All you did was knock him down a 200-story hole and then have a fusion bomb go off, and you thought that would kill the Emperor, but because it would. But because we're so talentless, and because we're so greedy and so barren of any form of originality, we're going to drag him back, and if it ruins the first three movies, then we don't care. We'll just do it because we're J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson and all the rest of those guys. So that's theme. Character and world. Well, world is certainly bottom. So if I had to put them in order, I would say most important is theme, second is character, third is plot, and fourth is world. Theme is the reason why you're telling the story. Plot is what the story is, but theme is why you're telling it. And the reason I put character above plot is because if you have good characters, they can be in a crummy plot. But if you have a great plot and have crummy characters, nobody's going to care. If your theme is your target and your second effort goes to characters, then you will essentially get 80% or 90% of what you're trying to get across. I have this theme that I want to get across, and I've got good characters to deliver the theme, and where they go and what they do may not make a lot of sense, but that's not what it's about anyway, especially in things like science fiction or fantasy. And then things like the world are just, the world is literally the stage. It's the stage in the sense that the Globe Theater is the stage for Hamlet. Hamlet can be played anywhere. The more, if you want to say realistic you can make it, that's great. But essentially, the stage is, the world is well, it's last out of the four. So figure out what you want to say, not how you want to say it. You can't do, so many movies are about how things happen rather than what they're about. They're not about anything. They've gotten the idea that because movies like the original three Star Wars had so much theme, they figured, oh, well, so the reason they succeeded is because of plot, character, and world, right? Well, we're not going to spend too much time on character. Let's concentrate on plot and world. We're not very good with plots either, so we'll go with world. So they put all their money into world, meaning the Star Wars brand, and you've got, we all know what Star Wars spaceships look like and Star Wars aliens. They thought, so I would order them theme, character, plot, and world, and J.J. Abrams and the rest of them ordered them world, plot, theme and character. If you have a good theme and you have a good character and good characters, you've got a story to tell. Hope that helped. Chris Taylor again. If someone asks you how often you think of the Roman Empire, should that automatically be assumed to include the Byzantines too? Does it go as far as the Holy Roman Empire? I don't think so, personally. How often do you think about the Roman Republic versus how often do you think of the Roman Empire? Wow, that's quite a remarkable question. I have never felt that that Constantinople was Western, let alone Roman, and for a significant period of time, which continues to this day, there was a Western Christianity and Eastern Christianity, Eastern Orthodox Christianity in Russia and the Slavic nations and so on, and Catholicism in the West. But to be perfectly honest with you, there are I don't know, a couple centuries of Christian emperors, but I don't even think about them either. When I think about Rome, I think about Imperial Rome at the height of its powers, which would be from Julius Caesar through I don't know, Scipio Africanus maybe. Not entirely sure. I didn't get those two reversed. But for me, Rome, when you mention the Roman Empire, that means togas in the city of Rome with the centurions and we all know what Roman soldiers look like. I've never considered. I mean, the Holy Roman Empire is essentially it's an EU, it's a European Union. Even at the time, it was not very cohesive. But I don't think the Holy Roman Empire has left any long-lasting impact on modern society. It was important at the time, but it was also extraordinarily fractious at the time. The only time the Holy Roman Empire really had anything that resembled the Roman Empire was right at the beginning with Charlemagne, and then things fell apart pretty fast. So I just consider, and the Roman Republic is, it's hard to think of the Roman Republic kind of as a standalone sort of thing, even though it did stand alone for hundreds of years. To me, the Roman Republic is always the thing that the Imperial Roman society was plastered on top of. Yeah, I'm thinking togas, the Senate, and characters like Scipio and those contemporaries of Caesar, and Scipio's a grossly underrated character in history. He really is, I think. But yeah, that's generally where I that's what I think about when I think about Rome. Jacob Belchek, hail Bill. It's quite around these parts as I write this, so I'd figure I'd try to slide in a second question in the interest of getting you to give me a 4-hour show to chew on. Well, you're going to get you're not going to get more than a 2-hour show, and probably less, but we'll see. It seems to me that the fundamentally masculine story arc is the hero's journey. I think you'd have to look long and hard to find a young man who doesn't resonate with a desire to slay dragons, marry a princess, build a golden age in the world around him, and leave a strong foundation to the progeny born to him from the love of his wife. That's rather elegantly put. Is there an equally fundamental and universal feminine story arc? What would you call it? How does it operate? And what do you think it says about the difference between men and women? I don't know that there is a story arc like that. I don't suppose it's going to be news to anybody. So let me just give the fundamental basic caveat just for those members of Media Matters that are carefully scribbling away. When I talk about things like traditional gender roles, that's not saying that I don't think that women should be doing anything other than raising families. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's insane not to realize that men and women have very different goals and attributes, and that they balance each other out really remarkably well, and quite astonishingly evenly, but they are very different. The reason I don't think that there is a feminine archetypical story role is because traditional female gender roles have been relatively passive. The archetype goes back to prehistory and exists in all primitive societies today, societies that are still in the world that are prehistorical, meaning they don't have their own writing and so on, all function pretty much the way that archaeologists are quite convinced our ancestors function. And essentially what it comes down to is the men go out and hunt and gather, and the women stay home and cook and create things, mostly with crafts and cloth and things of that nature. These are, if you take that as obvious, because I think it is obvious, you're going to run into better story material from the member of the tribe who had to fight off a saber-toothed tiger armed with only a towel and a stick, versus a woman who might make an extraordinarily fine basket or something that's of greater use to the community. It's just a different environment. The role of men has been to go out and face danger, and facing danger has consequences. That's why it's exciting and interesting. That is not generally the female role in the past. And to be perfectly honest with you, and this is why I believe what I believe, be perfectly honest with you, it's not that way today. When I see these Hollywood actresses talking about, or any of these modern feminists basically talking about being a girl boss and all the rest of it, I'm wondering, okay, well, if you're the girl boss, I'm just curious, if there's a gigantic spider in the bathtub and you live with a man, who goes and gets the spider? Because if it turns out that the man comes shrieking out of the bathroom and you have to go in and get the spider in your girl boss way, then I don't think that's a guy you particularly respect. I don't think you're a particularly happy person. It's not a coin toss, and it's not civilizational. That's kind of what I wanted to say. This is not something that society imprints on people. It's just biology. The males will go and do the things that need to get done because that's their job, because the women are more valuable than that from a biological point of view, from which evolved many of our ethical decisions and so on. The reason it's women and children first is because they're more valuable than men. And the reason for that is simple too. If you're going to perpetuate the species, women have to have kids. And if you want 100 kids, you have simultaneously, more or less, if you want 100 births, you must have at least 100 women. You must have 100 women to have 100 births. But you really only need one guy, one pretty healthy guy whose aerobic situation is pretty good. But from a biological point of view, if you have a society that consists of 100 men and 100 women, because it is very, very nearly 50-50, almost perfectly 50-50. If you got a society that's got 100 men and 100 women in it, and you want that society to double or grow, then you need to protect the 100 women, because you need every one of them in order to get a new life into this community. But you can essentially sacrifice 99 of the men without affecting the outcome. And this is the essence of so much of traditional role models. And the other part of the traditional role model thing that modern women simply cannot seem to understand. I've seen so many videos of them, young women, where they just don't get it. They do not understand why it bothers men that a 21-year-old woman may have slept with 100 guys by the time she's 21. That's not an exaggeration. That's relatively common now. 60 to 100 guys by the time she's 20, 21. She will say, Well, guys do it. First of all, I think a lot of guys do it, and but let's just say that they did. The essential question of biology that the modern feminists fail to understand, and that modern young women do not seem to understand, no matter how hard you try to beat this into their heads, is that when a baby is born, we always know who the mother is, but we never know who the father is. Prior to DNA testing, we just didn't know. And so women will invest all of the resources they have in their life for the benefit of their children. They're wired to do that. And men will do that too. But men have no way of knowing for sure whether this child is in fact theirs. And everything hinges upon this. Everything hinges upon this. It's not only it's not only like a Richard Dawkins kind of a genetic imperative, but it's just a personal emotional imperative for men too. You don't want to be working your tail off and sacrificing everything you've got up to and including your life, all of your wealth, all of your work, all of that, and investing it in somebody else's child. It just isn't. It's repulsive on an emotional level. If it's unknown, obviously, needless to say, there are countless foster. I'm not talking about that. This is the fundamental difference between men and women, and that is the women know that this child is theirs, and so they can dedicate their entire lives to that child, but the men don't. And that's why things like loyalty and that's why things like loyalty are valued by men. If it turns out that you're thinking about having children with a woman who slept with 100 people, you really do have to ask yourself whether this is, your best option. If putting aside the just the general skeeviness of it, you kind of have to ask yourself, well, she went through 100 guys and didn't form a lasting connection with any of them, so what makes me think I'm going to be different here? And also, it just shows essentially if you're doing 100 men at age 21, you are not overly concerned with people's feelings. In fact, there's very compelling evidence that once you get beyond a certain number, then females lose the ability to pair bond completely. And all of these young women, it's already happening to older women. It's hitting the wall business, 35-year-old girl boss, yeah, you got your own house for $300,000 and you've got a car and you make, $250,000 a year, and you've got all of these things that you're told that you need, and then you go out looking for a man to share it with, and the man sits down and says, I don't care how much money you make. It's not relevant, because we both know that I'm going to be spending all the money, and your money that you make is going to be spent on you, and the money that I make is going to get spent on you. So I don't care how much money you make. I don't care about your house. I don't care about any of those things. None of those things are valuable to me. Those are qualities that are valuable in men. And you've been told that that's what you should go after. You've been told that as a female, you need to go and acquire the things that men have. And you seem to think that by getting the things that men have, that will make men attracted to you. But I think quick examination of that would tell you no, quite the contrary. What you need to be looking for is you need to be looking for the things that the men don't have. That's where the market value is, and because women have to bear the children and raise them, that makes them less viable in the workplace, and because of the value of women, the higher value of women, evolution and socialization have created traditional societies where the mores and the moral imperatives are protect the women. That's it. That's the prime directive. Protect the women. And nature has equipped us for this role because this is what works out well. The reason men are so reckless and do such dangerous things like, I don't know, landing on the moon, things like that, is because we are built in such a way in our emotional system and our risk system and our adrenaline, all the stuff that makes us men, has been specifically designed to be, if not disposable, then expendable. Nature can afford to take risks with men. It cannot afford to take risks with women, and that's why men are much more capable of physical strength and speed and quickness. They have a much better sense of three-dimensional space, and men have an emotional system that's compartmentalized, which allows us to function in emergency situations or high-stress situations much better than women who generally don't. So men are built to go out there and defend the place, and loyalty, sexual loyalty for men is tough because we're wired to impregnate as many people as possible. That's the best way to increase our chances of our genes being passed down. So when a man gets married, he's making a very large sacrifice, very large biological sacrifice. And what he wants in exchange for that is some sense that the sacrifice that he's making by giving up chasing other women is going to be, it's a good deal, but it's not a free deal. And what the men need is the men need some sense of assurance that their wives are not, that they're not going to give up all of this stuff. They're not going to give up all the biological instincts that they have and work themselves to death eventually for a woman that's not going to be faithful to them and the possibility of raising somebody else's child. So what I find is that I find that whenever, no matter what these movie stars say, or what the feminists say, I've never seen a woman be the first person into danger. Now, maybe that's just a limited perspective on things, but I've never seen the kind of warrior behavior that modern movies attribute to women in the real world. I've never once ever seen or heard of a woman who heard noises outside, who went and got the gun and a flashlight and went out to see what was going on. That's not her job. And when push comes to shove, and we live in a society where push doesn't come to shove at all anymore, but it will again. That's the way we both like it, men and women. They both like it that way. Right now, at this point in our unraveling history, which is rapidly heading in towards crisis, there is no unique danger to women, and so women covet the things that men have because they know that they don't have to pay for them with the kind of duties and responsibilities that men also have. In other words, they can want to be girl bosses all they want to because they know that if things really go south in a hurry, they're not going to be in a muddy foxhole, and if shooting starts, they're not expected to go out and take down the shooter. They're expected to get low, and probably there'll be some man who'll throw his own body over them to protect them. So they want it both ways because the society is so disconnected from reality that they can have it both ways for a while. But even then, even if there's no need for the physical protection, it just is crystal clear to me that they are extraordinarily unhappy because they've been told that the best way to be a woman is to be a man. And And one of the great ironies, it's actually kind of delicious. It's annoying, but sometimes when people just demand to be slapped, back to reality, um, it's it's kind of refreshing to see it. Um, they're told that they should have to have the qualities that men have, but they don't want to change places. You know what I mean? In other words, I've never met a woman, a straight woman, who was actively looking to be the one to go and get the spider out of the bathtub, to go out and be the one who goes out into the living room or into the backyard with the gun while her husband cowers in the room with the door locked. I've never met a straight woman that thought that was a good arrangement. So they don't want to reverse roles. They want to assume the Bill Burr got it exactly right. They look at masculinity as a buffet. Oh, CEO, I'll have that. Getting drafted to go off to war. No, I don't want any of that. And we like the women and children first in the lifeboat thing, because if the ship starts going down, as Bill Burr said, the ship starts going down. Bill Burr says all of a sudden all these tough feminists are like, "Help me! I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl. I guess somebody." And he's right. He's right. Yes, I called it stolen valor before, and it is. It's when you see women warriors, and I'm not specifically not talking about Ellen Ripley or Sarah Connor, because those two women characters, those two women heroes, are not warriors. They're mothers who are forced to do what they're forced to do because they have to, because there's no one else to do it. That's why they're such great characters, and it's because they're written by men, because they understand that this business of hearing gunfire or a twig snap or a roar or a growl or something. People who are connected to the world we know who's wired for that. We don't feel things as intensely as women do, including fear. And I think that's useful. And this idea that it's all socialized, if you just start giving women more on-screen roles, then you'll have plenty of women, not only girl bosses, but women warriors. They actually believe this. And it's rapidly becoming clear that even they're beginning to realize it's not true. But if you look at infants, less than a year old, you put them together in a room, put 10 boys and 10 girls together in a big old nursery room, pretty soon, the girls are going to be sitting in a circle talking to each other, and the boys are going to be in the four corners looking out the windows. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. Natasha never ceases to be amazed at how badly I can overlook things in the house. Honey, do we have any spoons? Yes, they're right here where we always live. Anything that's lost in the house or something I need in the house, she'll point it out to me and go, "Oh, I just didn't see it." Because I didn't see it. I was looking for it. I didn't see it. That's amazing to her. She just thinks I must go around in this entire cloud, like I'm just this kind of lost lunatic, which of course is true. But the flip side of that is when we'll go for a drive or something, and I'll say, where are we right now, honey? I don't know. Well, what freeway are we on? Well, I don't know. And did you notice that hawk that was over there? No. Their attention is focused inward. Ours is focused outward. I personally find this to be really cool, because I don't think either one of them are better than the other one. I think that they're different and useful. So there you go. Cody Fett. Got the Cody Fett. Sir, since this was the last piece of advice Marisha Dark gave me before the big unveiling, I thought it honorable to follow up on it, which means recommending fiction conservatives might enjoy, even if it has female named characters. And I was wondering if that's still okay. Again, just let me just say that two of the best characters ever written, and there's a third one that I keep forgetting, it just slipped my mind, but Ellen Ripley is one of the best characters ever written because Ellen Ripley is 100% believable. She didn't join the Marine Corps to go and kick ass. She does not want to go back into the atmosphere processor. That's the last thing she wants to do. But she has to do it. Why? Because the script is smart enough to understand that Ripley cannot go into that atmospheric processor at the end of the second movie if there are any males available that could do it instead. If Hicks is in the dropship, and Hicks is basically saying, I'll stay here and guard the fort, Ripley, why don't you go down there and get the girl? Then nobody's going to believe that. Nobody's going to believe it. So, since it's a well-written script, it's a very well-written script, you got to make Hicks incapacitated. You've got to have Bishop preoccupied with bringing the shuttle down. That's pretty much it. There's nobody left. If there was somebody left, then Ripley wouldn't go. But there is nobody left, so she does go. So she's actually got more heroism in many ways than the soldiers do, because the soldiers lined up for this and agreed to it and seek it out. Ripley doesn't want any of these things. She just wants to get the hell out of there. And that's why it's such a perfectly believable character in both 1 and 2. I don't count anything after 2. There's some good moments in some of the following Alien things. Really, Aliens is a 2-part movie. And Ripley's great in both of them. And the same thing for Sarah Connor. Again, Terminator 1 and 2, everything after that's garbage. Sarah Connor is not out there. The difference between Sarah Connor in Terminator, where she's a waitress and is very feminine looking and just, soft and toned, but, she's a woman, she's a waitress. And then in Terminator 2, you see her and she's this buff, cut, frickin', killing machine. She didn't do that because she wanted to be a girl boss. She did it to protect her son, who is not only her son, but is going to be important to the future of humanity. And so she does what she does because she has to, not because she wants to be a girl boss. And this is the last thing I'll say on this particular topic, but one of the things that's so annoying and illuminating and all the rest of it is watching women writers try to write girl bosses. What women writers think male authority is and how it works and what it sounds like. You always end up with these Admiral Holdos or these other, the effing arrogance. They think that the whole thing is all about this kind of stern, cursing kind of, you will follow my goddamn orders whenever. That's what they think. That's what they think male authority is. That's as deep as they can understand it. They write these girl bosses with this kind of, they write the girl bosses like they're writing for Arnold in his prime, and then they just put a female actress into that role, and I think people are going to buy it. But that's not what leadership is, and that's not what any of this stuff is. So yeah, there you go. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed the whole question. Okay, female characters. So back to Cody Fett. Enter the only new show I watched last year. It's called Spy times Family, or Spy X Family, Spy Family. The short pitch is this: in the legally distinct 1960s, the world's greatest spy marries the world's greatest assassin, but the only one in the know is their telepathic adopted daughter, who is 4 years old and so who doesn't understand what's going on. I'm assuming that the two characters involved know, because if the spy doesn't know that she married the assassin or vice versa, then they're not very good spies or assassins. The show leaps from over-the-top action and absurd comedy to gritty espionage thriller and interpersonal drama to romance and slice of life, and somehow manages to cover all those genres with superb skill. It treats all its characters with respect, it treats its audience with respect, and it's just pleasant to watch. Plus, if you're into the political angle, you can look at it as allegory for the modern family and dating scene. Thank you for that super chat. I'll get to that in a second. Now here's the downside. It's an anime, and I know that in the past you haven't liked what you've seen or what you've seen there. However, knowing that you've been dying for a new show with a 60 steely-eyed missile man as the main character and lacking any of the other options, I've taken the liberty of buying you a 3-month subscription to the streaming site where Spy X Family is airing and forwarding it to your contact email at bill@billwhittle.com in the minute the show began. I hope you give the show a chance, and I hope it leaves you more optimistic than you were when it started. Well, first of all, thank you very much for that. Secondly, thank you for purchasing the membership. I don't have time to watch or do anything, and I won't for another 2 or 3 weeks at least. At least. I've been here 7 days a week for the last 2 months, 3 months, and that's not going to stop in the next few weeks. I'm sorry to say, Cody. So I feel bad about not being able to take you up on your generous offer, at least not immediately anyway, but perhaps downstream. And again, this sounds entirely too much like looking a gift horse in the mouth, because I'm very grateful for the very kind offer. But it's not just anime; it's any kind of cell animation that that attempts to be kind of realistic. But I will definitely give it a look. See, anime is creeping more and more into every aspect of society now. As this generation that grew up with anime is getting older and so on, I just don't. I don't even think it's that I don't get it. I just find it. I just find it a little puerile, I guess. But I will give it a look, see, and I'm sure you're right. I just hope I get a chance to actually do it. And we had a super chat over here, back to the thing we talked about a second ago from the Sacred Order of. It said, "Turnabout intruder predicted the girl boss." Yes, that's the Star Trek episode, I think, where Kirk beams into a woman's body and so on. And it predicted a lot of problems. So Eric says, hopefully this gets you to break through the revulsion to animation. Maybe it will increase my revulsion to animation. It's not like I don't know what animation is, and it's not like I've never seen it before. I don't. And it's not like I don't like it for random reasons. There's many reasons why I don't like it, and those reasons are consistent with my character and views about a lot of things. And so not only do I doubt it's going to break through my revulsion to animation for that kind of thing, I suspect that I don't want it to break through my revulsion for that kind of stuff. I'm not sitting here saying I will not watch any of it. I'm just saying I have watched some of it, and I just can't stand it. So I don't eat seafood either. And every now and then there are people who will just hear that, and they will take it as a personal challenge to make me try something because this doesn't taste like seafood, or this is really, really different, or this is really, really delicious, and you got to really have it. And you're just, the more I say no thank you, the more they dig in. And comes a point in those situations where I just say, I'm not doing it. And so it's not like I've never tasted it before or ever smelled it before. I don't like it. And whenever I see fragments of it, wherever I see it, which, as I say, is showing up pretty much everywhere, I just find the whole style to be dumb. The big eyes and the low angle shots and the long legs and the tiny little nose and the mouth that just does nothing while the head doesn't. I just no. Again, with the greatest respect, Cody, and I will take a look at that because you spent the money on it, and I certainly wouldn't insult you like that. Otherwise, I will definitely take a peek. But It's it's not something that this is not something I'm like, oh gee, I wish I could work my way through it. It's just a personal preference, and I don't like it, and I don't like the way seafood tastes either. So that's what I do. If I was starving to death, I have no doubt that I would be eating fish as like a seal, but I'm not, so I'm not. I get a world where I still get to thank you, Lord Bios, and since I still get to choose, I can be picky about what I watch and picky about what I eat, and I'm just not impressed by it. I just don't like it, and that's that. Oh, here we go again. Excellent. Here we go. Everybody, gird your loins. Yeah. Another super chat from the Sacred Order of Knightly Valor, I think. Anime is weakly drawn male characters with pointy chins. They all seem like girls to me, but there it is. I'm done with talking about anime for this episode. Okay, here we go with the big Charles Tomes wind up. From an undisclosed location in flyover country where Operation Paperclip, super genius Alexander Lipich designed the Delta Dagger Dart in the 1930s in Germany, for instance, resided until his passing from natural causes, Darth Chuck the Merciless Cheers. It's just worth it every time. Elon Musk unstacked his Starship from Super Heavy booster to install the newly recertified flight termination system in preparation for the next launch attempt in the next several weeks. The question for CSR Actual is thus, will the Democrats in their fit of pique destroy humanity's future just because SpaceX isn't hiring enough illegal aliens, undocumented immigrants, even though it is specifically prohibited to hire those people at a company making ITAR-controlled products and supplying launch services to NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, United States Air Force, U.S. Space Force. Space Force must always be in caps, by the way. Say it with me. Space Force! Elon Musk is the quintessence of everything that modern progressives hate. Everything that they hate. He's an individualist. He's rich because he's made his own money. And he is doing things without the imprimatur of government because he doesn't need government. As a matter of fact, all the government does is slow Elon Musk down. And for the mediocre and the talentless and the lazy, seeing somebody who's extraordinary and brilliant and hardworking pisses them off. It pisses them off because they feel like it makes them look bad. And that's really what it is. It does make them look bad. This is that classic anecdote or parable from Russian society, from Soviet society. You know, it's the collectivist society. Man prays for a cow, gets a cow, brings all of these new things to the village, grows extra crops, has milk, cheese, all of this stuff. Everybody benefits, and the guy living next door doesn't pray for a cow so he can do those things. He prays that the other guy's cow is going to die. And that's what it is. That's why the FAA is holding him up. The FAA is holding him up, and NASA's holding him up because NASA and the FAA can't do what he's doing. And it pisses off the weak-minded, lazy, small, petty tyrants that make up most bureaucracies. And so they will do whatever they can in their power to slow him down. And look, what the FAA is doing with Elon Musk and NASA too, for that matter, is not entirely different than what you see sometimes in like a DMV or something, when you can see the people behind the counters moving as slowly as they possibly can. You know, just as slowly as they possibly can. There's a line of, there's 300 people in the DMV, and it's like, now at window number 12, G4559. Now at window number 12, G at 4559. And you look around, and by the way, that's why, I don't know what your DMVs are like, but in California, it's not a sequential system. It's sequential, but it's broken up into little chunks, because if it was genuinely take a number, what you would do is you would get in there and you would say, now serving number 213, and you're going to look at your thing, it says 987, and you're thinking, okay. So they keep mixing it up a little bit to make sure you never really realize just how far down this stack you are. But this is the revenge of the it's the revenge of the turds is what it is. that's really what it comes down to. These are people that don't want to work, just have no desire to do it, no talent to do it, no inclination to do it, and they're perfectly fine living in mediocrity so long as everybody else lives in mediocrity. But if it turns out that somebody else is doing better than them, then they look at those achievements and they don't want to emulate them. They just want them to go away. So that's what they are. So they will do everything they can to stop them. And they are. Now, if you're going to fight that kind of kudzu, it helps if you're the richest man in the world. That is a big, big deal. Makes it very useful. I keep waiting, not expectingly or hopingly by any means, just dreading is a better word. I keep dreading the day when Elon Musk says he's going to have to take SpaceX out of the United States. And I think that day is certainly conceivable. I don't know if it's either likely or inevitable, but certainly it's on the table. At some point, they can make life so difficult for him and slow him down so much that he will just have to take SpaceX out of the United States and register it in the Bahamas or Panama or something like that. And if he were to take SpaceX to a island like Kwajalein or something and use the richest man in the world powers to buy a couple of those Marshall Islands, and by buy it I mean essentially, I'm not saying kick the people off of it, there are natives there, but essentially make them an offer they can't refuse. You can stay here, and instead of being run by the U.S. government, be run by SpaceX and Tesla. He ever finds a way to do that, essentially forms his own little independent duchy, his own little Vatican City, then chance of me picking up and moving is high. It's tempting to move to Florida and Texas and Idaho and any other number of places, especially from California. But I think if you were to move, if there was a SpaceX bill that had its own sovereign nation, that'd be a dream come true. That's where everybody would go. That island or whatever it is, or if you bought 100 square miles in the jungles, the worst place I could think of would be the jungles of Guyana, which is why the Jim Jones massacre is particularly horrifying to me, because it is in the most it's in the biome that I personally find most repugnant. Hot, humid, insects everywhere, poisonous snakes everywhere, just plain nasty. There's no place I would rather not be than in equatorial jungles. I'd much rather be at the poles. Now, my wife would have probably a different opinion on this, having grown up in Siberia, but I would much rather live in Antarctica than on the equator, anywhere. But if he were to take a couple hundred square miles of Ecuador and own it, then I would think about moving there, because the first thing he'd do is clear all that crap out of the way, and then he'd build inside, and then we'd have nuclear power and everything be air conditioned, and I'm sure he could figure out a way to actually put a little filter over the sun, just cut the temperature down a little bit. You go outside and swim. I have no doubt whatsoever he'd find some way to neutralize the mosquito threat and all the rest of it. But until that point, I ain't going. I'm not saying I'm not leaving California, but I'm certainly not leaving America. But he might have to, because it's incredible. Eric says he grew up in Pennsylvania. On occasion, I miss it. Pennsylvania, to me, will always be the heart of the United States. Always. Because one of them is because of the historical significance of Pennsylvania, Valley Forge and Independence Hall and all the rest of it. But for me, it's because all of my relatives live in Pennsylvania, and every time I came to America, we went to Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania smells like America. America smells like granite and fir trees. That's what America smells like. pine sap and granite, and Pennsylvania has a lot of that. I love Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania is fantastic. I really love it. All right, moving on. Last one, and then we're done. By gosh, here we go. Eric Blake again. Hey, Bill, with the NFL season in full swing, let me ask, have you ever been much of a sports watcher? If so, have you had any preferred teams? Inquiring minds want to know. P.S. Since beer is traditionally linked to sports, you said something last episode about showing off my vid with the audio on. Of course, I did mention that last episode, and I did not read this question or prepare for it, so I don't have them. So I'm sorry about that. However, as far as the first part of it goes, I occasionally like watching NFL football. I don't have time to watch anything right now, but I certainly can watch a football game. When I first got to Miami in 1970, that was when the Dolphins just started to get good. Right that year. 70 was the year they went to the, I think it was 70 when they went to the Super Bowl against the Cowboys and lost. And I loved the Dolphins. I loved the Miami Dolphins when I was young. I just love them. And then I went to the University of Florida, and so the only sports that I would ever watch routinely was Gator football. There are many years where I watched every Gator game. But I haven't had one of those years in at least 5 or 6 years, and I miss them because Gator football with other Gators is really, really fun. And the Gators lost to was it Utah in the opener? Got a new coach again. Got all kinds of constantly getting new coaches there. And then I don't know who we played next. It was a sacrificial lamb thing, and we had a small email group of Gator fans. Well, it's not so small, actually, 25, 30 people. And I said, I never liked this idea of the sacrificial lamb game, get you warmed up for the season. I never liked it. I always thought it was unfair. It's true for a lot of colleges. The first or second game will be, the name. I said, this one's unique. I have to say, we've reached a new low. We are finally, in our second game of the season, the mighty Florida Gators are playing a college that I have never heard of before, ever. I forget what it's called. Let's just say for the sake of it, it's called McGrath. And I thought McGrath is the name of the coach. Nope, turns out there's an entire university, and they're going to play the Florida Gators. And I said, this is shameful. And frankly, if that game is close, then I'm sure the first or second game next year will be against the Southeastern Wisconsin School for Wayward Girls, which, I'm sure will give us a easy win, too, to get our feet underneath us. I just hate it. But in any event, everything in the room you see behind you is orange and blue, and it's not just orange and blue. Those of you who are Florida Gator fans, well, it's hard to see because it's a little dark, but that is Florida orange, and this is Florida blue. This isn't a Florida shirt, but it's orange and blue, solid orange and blue. So yes, occasionally I watch football games. I haven't for a while, and I really do miss it. On this subject, it's the last question, but on this subject, I don't remember exactly the details, but David Mitchell, who's in Mitchell and Webb, the source of all of our Vectron lore. David Mitchell had a series called David Mitchell's Soapbox, and he was talking about I think he was talking about memory. He was saying that his team was playing, the team that he was really rooting for, was playing against a very tough opponent, and they won in the end, but he said the entire experience was miserable because it was nothing but an hour's game's worth of massive anxiety and fear. I didn't enjoy the game. I enjoyed the outcome, but I didn't enjoy the game. I was just an emotional wreck. He said, however, when we played these people and whomped them from the beginning, and just got up early and just never, ever lost the lead, he said, I had a fine time with that experience. And I thought, he's actually onto something there. He's a smart guy. So there we go. All right, hey, look at that. It's 2 hours more or less, and I have some sawing and some editing and posting to do, so I'm going to cheese it. So, as we all know, this show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, and we hope to be picking up a significant number of new ones once we get some of this stuff out there. I think these interviews are going to be really, genuinely do believe they're going to be unlike anything else that you've ever seen from either celebrity actors or even people like Burt Rutan or any of these people. Really did a lot of work and research on it, and I just think it's going to be interesting. So we'll find out soon enough. So at this point, we thank our members for making all this possible, and we will say goodnight to the YouTube stream first. So thanks for joining us live on YouTube, and we will see you. Let me just make sure about this. I have a speaking engagement this week. It's on Wednesday, and that's the day after tomorrow, isn't it? Okay, so I'll see you. Should see you Thursday night for Stress Free Lounge, unless it's the night that John can make it, and in which case I will reschedule. But generally, it looks like we'll see you Thursday night. So thanks for being with us here, you guys on YouTube.